I started 5 years ago at university, did my first gig at Oxford Brookes University where I was studying, and I hated university, so I wanted to do one thing that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd wanted to do comedy from about the age of 14. We sat and watched a Jimmy Carr DVD and I went, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. And then I had this sort of thing of going, that's someone's job, how incredible is that? So I always wanted to do it, and it wasn't until I got to uni that there was sort of an opportunity of this little comedy night, an open mic night where you could try it out. So I did that and then kind of pursued it, did like the student competition there is, like all the national competitions, and slowly worked up. So I started in November 2009 and I signed with my agent in April 2011. So, you know, 18 months. I still had a job when I first signed with my agent. Like, I used to email them from working in a lettings office. So that really helped. But then they weren't booking my gigs. Like, the thing with management is like some of them have live bookers in them, but some of them don't. And my management didn't. So I still booked all my own gigs, and they're just trying at that point to get you in front of the right people to progress your career. And it's quite a slow process. It didn't really kick in for 2 years. Like having management, like it's all like sort of work under the surface for a long time, and then all of a sudden like little bits and bobs start to come out. I was pretty scared about giving up studying because it's sort of a leap into the unknown, isn't it? And especially because being self-employed is terrifying. Even now, being self-employed is the worst thing about like my job, because if you're sick, you're done. Like, you don't get paid. If you have a quiet month, it's really difficult. So it's pretty difficult. And eventually, like, I hit a point where my attendance at university was really bad, and my lecturer just went, why are you here 10% of the time? I went, I'm doing stand-up. And she went, oh God, go and do that. Like, give it a go. Like, you'll regret it forever if you don't. So it wasn't that I chose to leave. Like, it just started to crumble, really. That's why I did it. It's the thing I struggle with the most in this job is being on my own and being in my own company. That's the hardest part of it. So quite a lot of, like traveling, and it's very lonely. Although when you get to gigs, you've got you and there's other comedians on a bill if you're doing a club gig. So once you're at the gig, it's fine, but sitting in a car for 4 hours each way, like, I find really difficult. The best part of the job is that I get paid to do whatever I want. So on stage, like, no one tells you what you can and can't say. The only things that tell you what you can and can't say are like decency, like moral values and things like that. And as long as you work within that, like, you can talk about anything. And that's the most satisfying thing, that you can, like, whatever you want to do, you can do. So when I had a job, so I worked at Next, I worked in a lettings office at the same time, and I was gigging. I used to sit in my lettings office and write all my jokes and book all my gigs. I was incompetent, basically, at my job. So I used to sit there and do all my own admin. It's the most productive I've ever been, because now I've got my own time all day. Like, I don't want to sit and do admin. But when you're in a job that you don't like very much, that was something I was really excited about. So I used to sit and do all my emails and book all my gigs and do all the phone calls I needed to do and all that kind of stuff. So actually, having a job that you'll want to be distracted from is the best thing you can do when you start comedy. Like, sitting in your office, like sneaking in a quick email to try and book a gig in. I think doing comedy is an absolute combination of hard work and natural talent, because if you're naturally gifted as a comic, that's great, but you have to work hard to get the gig. The thing with comedy is you can be the most talented person in the world, but it's a meritocracy, so you need to be as good as possible to get as far as possible. And that little nugget of natural talent needs gigs and writing and all of that to go in. Because there's people that are amazing at comedy but terrible at admin, and they never get on at comedy. You almost need the perfect combination of being like, having a bit of talent and being quite good and being on it with admin, and that's the best way to progress. Whereas if you're brilliant at admin but terrible at comedy, you're an agent. And if you're amazing at comedy but terrible at admin, you've got a full-time job forever. Like, you're just a funny guy that's there. So I think you need to have the perfect balance of both. So the Extra Factor was a massive life-changing thing for me, because I was doing the circuit. I was like earning a relatively modest living as a comedian, kind of like doing okay, building up to doing my first Edinburgh show, like all the classic things you do when you're starting out. And all of a sudden I get this kind of very odd TV job where there's lots of press attention, and like the job, when I got the job, like every day leading up to the job before they announced it, there was odds in the paper of who was going to take the job, because I took over from Ollie Murs, who's so high profile, and like there was all these ridiculous names like Grimmy and Greg James and like Dave Berry, like those kind of people, and you could put bets on it. And like, I knew I had the job, and I would have probably made a fortune on myself. Like, because the odds I'd have got on like an unknown comedian. Like, I was essentially the closest you could get to a bloke off the street getting it. And it changed my life so much, because there's so much press interest in the X Factor. And even if you're doing things like Mock the Weekend Live at the Apollo, which sell tickets as a comedian, you're not like in the papers and sort of, being like speculated about. But X Factor's like a press machine where all of that happens for the contestants and the people that work on it. So straight after Extra Factor, I did this 54-date tour that was, it was over 8 months. So I did September to December while I was doing Extra. I did 18. And then it started. Then we took a couple of months off, and then I started again in the March, and we did like 36 dates. And it was amazing because all I've ever wanted as a comic is to be able to tour off my own back. And I wasn't doing like big venues, I was doing like, 150 seat like little theatres and comedy clubs and things like that. And I'd just go and do my own show for like an hour and 20 minutes, and then I'd have a support act as well. When I first started, I didn't really have a mentor or anything. I was quite sort of solitary because I didn't live in London, and the London circuit, when you start, there's like an open mic circuit of gigs where there's like 15 acts on, they all do 5 minutes, and like there's not much of an audience, like they're like not very good gigs, and they're very cliquey, and like they all know each other, and because I wasn't in that, I didn't really like get on with people. Not get on with them, but I didn't know any of them. Whereas where I started in Oxford, there was like 2 of us as me, a guy called Alex, and a guy called Chris that all started out together, and we sort of helped each other out rather than like having someone that was further on than me sort of mentor me. I had like my mates that I started out with, we were like a little gang, and then as you go, you sort of, you pick up new people that you're friends with, and all the people I started out with, like it's like Chris and Alex, but Angela Barnes, Ramesh Ranganathan, like Rob Beckett, they're still the people that are my friends, and you kind of like egg each other on to do better and help each other get better and look at each other's gigs and do notes together to like help each other be as good as you can be, rather than having someone that's going, this is the way to be. You sort of all work it out as you go along. So 2015 is going to be, I don't really know yet, like 2015, hopefully I'm going to get a couple of TV shows away, like there's a couple of things I'm really excited about. I'm probably going to do another tour in the autumn. I'm going to do the Edinburgh Festival, I think, with a brand new show where you kind of go for a month, and it's essentially a big jobs fair where you go and do a show and prove yourself to people, and audience come, and reviewers come, and TV people come, and bookers come, and everyone kind of comes to see your show, and it's where the industry kind of goes, this is what I'm like now, like come and see me, like I've got a great show, please give me work. So I'll do that, and then gig lots. I've got lots of gigs in the new year, kind of a bit of travelling with work, hopefully, kind of like gigs abroad I've started to do a little bit more, and just sort of like trying to pay my rent, really, trying to keep afloat. Like any self-employed person.